Hi, and welcome to the Keys to Therapy. Today's guest is Michelle Knight. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Like, there's so many good things you're about to tell everybody, and I'm ready for it. So, before we get fully started, can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So, my name is Michelle Knight, and I am from Alabama in the Birmingham area, and I am a group practice owner, and I'm also a licensed social worker.
Mhm.
And we are currently in the process of opening our second location.
It's amazing. Geez, 2 locations. That's really great. How many staff do you have right now?
So, currently we have 10 therapists, and we're in the process of trying to hire two more.
Wow. Yeah. So it's big. It's growing.
It is growing, yes.
It's exciting. So before we also get into the big questions I have for you today, I wanted to start with just a little bit of background on what made you decide to become a therapist. Like, how did you get to this point?
Sure. So basically, what I tell people is that therapy kind of found me.
Hmm.
So I had no intention of ever being a therapist. So my degree is in social work, and I did get my bachelor's in 2007. And then I just planned to practice social work at that level. And
Hmm.
then eventually, I had a friend who decided to go to grad school and sort of recruited me to go with her. So I thought we could kind of do the buddy system,
Hmm.
and so I thought, well, I might as well. Maybe I can get paid more because social workers don't get paid much.
Right.
And so then I went into the program and did really well. And decided at that point, well, the goal was to be a medical social worker. And so they tried to put me into a clinical program for my practicum. And I told them it was an addiction. I told them I wasn't interested. And so the irony of it, though, is my first job after I graduated was at that place that I declined to do my practicum at. And I never wanted to really be a therapist. Obviously, I took counseling classes in grad
Yeah.
school, but that wasn't really my vision for myself. But when I got into it, it just sort of stuck. And then I realized that I just really loved it. And I didn't think that I could do anything else. And so I just really had like a passion for it. And so that's kind of how it started.
Oh, that's amazing. I think it's funny hearing people's stories because I feel like it's one or the other. Either people are like, I always knew I wanted to be a therapist, or they're like, I don't know, it just kind of happens. So it's fun that for you, you're just like, I'm along for the ride. Let's see what happens. And see you found something you love, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I know at your practice now, obviously, with you being the owner, you hire people, you have some provisionally licensed people too.
Yes. We have one right now, in the process of potentially hiring another. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it will be really helpful for some of the new therapists out there to hear from a group practice owner. Because I know a lot of people are interested in private practice. But
Right.
did your program talk at all about private practice from what you can remember, your grad school program?
No, I really don't remember a lot about it. I kind of, to be honest, just learned as I sort of got into it and did my own research. And then I also just started finding people who were in private practice, and knew that they were successful. And so I asked to take them out to lunch. And I just started kind of picking their brain and figuring out what it is I needed to do. And then I also was a part of a group practice before I started my own.
Mm.
And so I learned a lot from that. And so a lot of it just sort of kind of came to me through, sort of just going through the process.
Yeah. So, because I know for most people, their programs, I know mine didn't talk about private practice at all. So I think a lot of this information is probably going to be pretty new for people, but also really needed. So I think as time's going on, a lot more people are wanting to work in all kinds of different areas, of course, but like there's more of a pull for private practice. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of gaps in knowledge as to how that works and what it is. So I'm just curious, like, why do you think that there's so many gaps in that knowledge when it comes to private practice?
Well, for me, I think the program focused on skill set and not really on career.
Ah,
And I feel like, and maybe in our practice too, like in social work, there's not as many like individuals who are into counseling.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit more unusual than someone who goes to school to be a licensed counselor.
Right.
So that could be part of it for the social work component of that. But I don't really know, to be honest. I just know that for me personally, I really didn't get a lot of that.
Mhm. So it sounds like you had to put together your own like skill set when it came to private practice. Like you had the
Right,
clinical stuff, but you
right,
really sought out learning from other people who had the
right.
knowledge.
hmm
I
And then
think,
also too, a lot of trial and error as well. So
yeah. I think like most of being a therapist is trial and error, honestly. And I kind of wish that people had been more honest about that with me in the beginning because I feel like in grad school and even sometimes in internships and stuff like that, you just want to try so hard to know everything and be good at it. And there's a huge learning curve.
yeah,
So
there is.
even when you
Mhm.
think you got it in one area, then you're like, oh, let me switch to this other, like private practice. And you're like, yeah, I don't really know much about this. So here we go. Now I'm a student again.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But that's great advice, though, I think. Like you said, seeking people who are doing it, like seeking them out, meeting with them, offering to buy them coffee or lunch, and really trying to learn from them.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people are protective of that information I came across, but then my thought process was is the ones that don't want to help you learn, then those aren't the people you need to spend your time with, and that's okay. But there are a lot of people who want to share their knowledge and help cultivate people who are starting in this industry. And so those are the people that I tried to lean on personally.
Yeah. And I think there needs to be a sense of community when it comes to therapists. I mean,
I agree.
especially, I think, especially in private practice, honestly, because when you usually start, you're by yourself. So that's a lot to take on. And then when you're also hiring people, you're still in some ways by yourself because now you're in charge of everybody. Like they're your employees. They're not necessarily your coworkers in the way
Right.
that they used to be, or other people you'd work with were. So I think referral sources, there's a lot of reasons to network.
hmm
I think that it's great that you were like, okay, I know I want to go here. I don't really know how to get here. Let me learn from some of the people who have, but also like buy them lunch in the process. So it's not
Right.
like, give me this knowledge for free. I'll buy you some food and let's share.
Right. Well, and also too, in return, I, would give them referrals if they were not appropriate for me. So I always try to give back to the people who have taught me things as well. And so I try to keep those relationships as like a two-way street and not always just like a taking type of relationship, because I think that's important too.
Oh yeah, it's really respectful as well. And I think people will be more likely to help you if they know that you're a good person, you're respecting their boundaries, you're also offering to, have it be a reciprocal relationship and not just taking from them. I think that's good.
hmm
So, when it comes to working in private practice in particular, what do you think that therapists, especially newer therapists, should know about some of like the financial aspects of going to private practice? Because it's very different than working at an agency.
Sure. So financial as like what it takes to build clients, or how that sort of gets funneled with insurance specifically, or
Yeah, even like payment, like so typically I think a lot of people start at like community mental health or intensive in-home or
right,
something along those lines where it's like 40 hours a week, consistent paycheck, benefits, all of
right.
that stuff. And then when you end up going to private practice, everything is structured very differently. W-2 to
Yes.
1099, people might not know what that
Yeah,
means.
right,
Benefits, how people can get paid, like
right,
splits or percentages or flat rates. Like there's a lot of different pieces.
right.
And I've seen a lot of people recently in some of the Facebook groups I'm a part of that'll say, I got this job offer, but this is what they're offering,
hmm
1099 with this split or whatever. And they don't even know what that means. So
Right.
I don't know if there's any of those pieces to it that maybe you'd want to
Sure.
clarify.
Well, I think the first thing to do when you're in a private practice, whether you're doing it for yourself, just independently, or you are going to join a group practice, I think
Mhm.
that you need to consult with two people first. And this is one of the things that I did not do that I wish I had done from the get go, but you need to consult with an accountant.
Okay.
And you need to ask them about being an employee versus a 1099. I know that states have certain regulations on that. There's a big debate on if it's ethical to be a 1099 or not in our practice.
Hmm.
I know that there are a lot of people who've gotten different professional advice from their lawyers or accountants, and that contradicts with other people in other states who have been told different things.
Right.
But you just need to try and find a team that you trust and you feel like they're going to help you make good decisions. And then also, you just need to be knowledgeable about your state and also federal guidelines before you kind of decide what you need to do. But I would say that that's the first starting point, is you need to consult with them about what that would look like for you and if that's a good move.
Oh yeah. And I think again, that's stuff that's not taught in grad school
Right.
at all. I never heard about like 1099s or W-2s or
Right.
any of that. That was all foreign to me until I started getting into that. Like
Right.
private practice in particular, because I started at a group too. So then it's
Right.
like, oh, there's options. And I think you're right about the states, because sometimes people go into these big Facebook groups or whatever their community is, right? And there are different rules in different states. So what they think might be acceptable in theirs isn't for another one. So people may unintentionally be getting the wrong information.
And so that's why it's good to find people on your team who are licensed in your state and also have had experience working with people in your industry as well.
That makes sense. Yeah. And either way, you're going to want some kind of accountant to help you with the financial aspects, because it runs different in private
Right.
practice, especially if you're a
Mhm.
1099.
Right.
Now, what about like splits or flat rates? Can you explain a little bit about what those two things would be for like a group practice?
Sure. So a lot of different practices are structured differently. So a flat rate would be, I'm just going to give you a fee for service. So for every hour that you spend with a client, I might give you $50 for that hour. A split would be more like, maybe you have a 40-60 split, meaning that potentially you as a clinician who is coming in as a 1099 is going to receive 60% of the profit that the group practice basically collected on your behalf. And then they are going to retain the other 40% in exchange for covering a lot of different things. And again, it varies from practice to practice, but for us, we cover a lot of things, which includes like your office, billing, even getting people credentialed with us. We cover most things. There's very few things that we don't cover. So those are things that you also need to find out with if you are going to consult with someone about potentially joining their group practice.
Yeah.
What do you offer, and what am I getting for the percentage that you are going to retain on my behalf?
Oh, yeah. I think being transparent is helpful, because sometimes you hear the split and you're like, "Oh, you're taking 40%." But if you don't understand what all goes into it, that
Right.
40% may be a really good deal, or in some places it may not. So,
Right.
I mean, I've heard of people going to group practices and the practice is taking, say, the 40%, but they're doing all their own marketing. They have to find all their own clients. They're doing their own credentialing. They're kind of doing everything themselves. They just may not be using the office space or be on the website.
Right. And I've actually heard of that, and somebody is only getting 40% as the clinician,
Oh my God.
and the other person is retaining 60%. But when they sat down and really looked at it, they actually were doing the majority of the work. And so it didn't make a whole lot of sense for them to really even be in that structured model, because they were losing money and they were the one that was, putting all the effort in.
Yeah. So it sounds like when therapists, because even if you're not a new therapist, you're new to private practice, group practice, your own, whatever it is, there's a lot of financial considerations to take in. So questions they
Yes.
should be asking. And then if you're a
Mhm.
1099, you have to take out your own taxes. So that accountant
Correct.
would be really big.
Yes, and it's really important to talk to them ahead of time on what you need to put aside, because sometimes people get caught where they weren't really saving that money, and then
Yeah.
they get this big bill at the end of the year, or they weren't paying their taxes quarterly, which your accountant can help you sign up to do. And then they just get this big surprise when they weren't really putting a certain percentage aside for the taxes at the end.
Yeah. And I think that's another good point about the states too, because I've seen people I swear, at least once a week ask in some of these big groups, what percentage should I be saving for taxes? And it's like somebody in New York State or California is going to have a totally different percentage than somebody in North Carolina or Alabama. So
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I think it's good when you mentioned earlier finding an accountant who's knowledgeable also in our fields, because
Yes.
they'll know about like expenses and write-offs and those types of things as well to maybe help
Right.
that tax stuff.
And I always would err on the side of caution. Even when I was like in a group practice before I started my own group practice, I would save more than what was recommended. So that way, you have extra cushioning and you're not stressing about it. And then, hopefully at the end you have a surprise where you have some money left over.
Oh yeah.
So I always think that that's a good practice. And then the other thing too, while I'm thinking about it, that's also beneficial is so whether you are going to start your own independent practice or via 1099, it's also very important that you go and set up a business account through a bank and
Mhm.
that you make sure that when you're getting payment from that group practice, or even if you are paying yourself, if you are an independent practitioner, that basically that money goes directly to your business account first
Mhm.
before you pay yourself. And the reason for that is because there's something called commingling of funds. And what can happen is if you first, if you potentially get sued or something like that, even if you have an LLC to help protect you or help to protect your personal assets, if you're commingling your funds and it's unclear what's business and what's personal, they
Mhm.
can still go after your personal assets. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so it's really important to make sure that you pay yourself from
Mhm.
your business account and then you put that in your personal. So there's no confusion on what is what. It needs to be very separate.
Yeah, that's a huge point because I don't know about you, but I think of like the IRS or anything, I get scared. And I'm like, no, I don't even want you guys to know my name. Like, hopefully, I never see any of you in real life. Like, leave me alone. So, you have to take some of those steps to guarantee that your money's safe and that you're doing the right thing. Because, like you said, whether it's a huge tax bill at tax time or having these issues with funds being all intertwined, like none of that is going to be good for even like your own mental health as a practitioner. I mean, money's like a huge stress for people, so they have to. I like that you're saying like get your money straight, understand what your systems are, understand what the pay is going to look like, understand what you're going to do with that pay, and then really take all those things into consideration before you're jumping in to
Right.
either your own or even like you said as a 1099. So for those that may be a W-2 employee at a group practice, how does that differ than a 1099?
So typically with a W-2 employee, a lot of times what you're going to see is that the group practice owner is going to help pay your taxes. So therefore, you're not going to have to typically worry about that. So I don't know, a lot of them are structured differently. Some of them will also offer you benefits with that, and some of them won't. So
Okay.
those are just all questions that you need to kind of ask up front.
Hmm.
Sometimes people say that we offer benefits, but some people think that means health insurance, but that's not always what they mean. So you just need to make sure that you're very clear about what it is they're going to bring to the table before you sign up with them. So there's no surprises.
Oh yeah, and that's a really good point about health insurance because I wanted to ask about some of that next with benefits in general, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes like I've seen group practices that'll say we offer benefits, but the benefits are so like one of them I can think of said like 401k and health insurance, but they didn't help you pay any of the health insurance. They just kind of like said, here we offer this plan through the whatever platform they were using that had that. Um,
Right,
and you can get a 401k through this platform, but we don't match it or actually do anything with it. We just like have it as an option you can open.
right.
So I think that that's really good. You mentioned that about insurance because sometimes people will see benefits and just assume it's like a typical job at like community mental health or something where benefits PTO and like all these things would be the same, but they're not
Right.
necessarily
Mm-mm.
practice.
And you also need to take in consideration, at least from my personal experience, when I was, and I still pay my own health insurance, right? But so I have to get that privately. But what some people don't realize is that it's just as easy as picking up the phone and calling Blue Cross or whatever insurance you want to have for personal coverage and just asking for like what their price of a private plan is. And I noticed that a lot of times too, like you may not qualify because of your income for the marketplace. But in my personal experience, what I saw is that the marketplace prices, if you did not qualify, were actually higher if you went through them
Oh,
instead of when I called directly to that same insurance company for that same plan. For me personally, and I don't know, if anyone else has any different experiences, but for me, it was a lot cheaper.
wow. Oh, that's a really good tip because I think everybody just assumes the marketplace is the only place you can go.
Right.
I would have never thought to call the insurance directly.
Yeah.
So,
And it's very easy to do. And usually you can get pretty reasonable plans. And so I had some people who, because we do not offer health insurance, but I have some people where that's sort of like something that they sometimes get hung up on is the health insurance thing. And so what I tell them is you can actually get it on your own pretty reasonably, depending on how much coverage you need.
yeah.
And you can actually sometimes still come out better as a 1099 because you're making more money. And then also you're just paying for it out of pocket at a lower cost than maybe like what you initially thought it would be.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very, very good tip. Because I think that is probably the biggest holdup I've seen for people to switch from like agency work to group private practice or solo is the insurance. That
Right.
freaks people out. They're worried. And not everybody has a spouse who they can be on their insurance. Or sometimes to add somebody, if you are married, it's a lot of money
Yeah,
potentially. Because
it
some,
can be.
yeah, I know sometimes for like employers, they'll pay for like their employees insurance, but then to add people, I mean, it could be hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Right.
So yeah, I think that that makes sense. And like you said, looking for also the type of coverage you need because maybe you don't need the most expensive plan.
Right. Another thing too, another tip is that some people maybe have a partner that they live with,
Hmm.
and maybe their partner gets benefits through their work, and maybe they're not married, but they do live together. Depending on your state, some are more liberal with this than others. You can see if their work is willing to add you to their policies. Sometimes that has happened for people, and I know in California it's not that uncommon, but some people don't even think to ask that to see if
Yeah,
their partner's work would potentially put them on the same plan. And sometimes they will do it if you cohabitate together.
that's amazing. Yeah, that would be really good too, because there's a lot of people who are in that situation. I can think of quite a few people who are not, they've been with their partner for a long time, but they don't want to get married because of student loans or like certain things that they're like, no, 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 that's going to mess up my loan payment. Like if we have
Right.
combined income, so let's just keep it where it's at, and unfortunately, it's like a big piece of our fields is
Mhm.
most of us have or have had student loans. So
Right. And I'm a
yeah,
true believer the worst thing somebody can tell you is no. So like no is
right.
not that not
Yeah.
that bad, but it's better to just find out than to potentially like miss out on something that could really help you.
Exactly. And if you're at an agency or, whatever it is, and it's not working for you, and private practice will give you that better work-life balance. The biggest thing holding you back is that insurance piece. Like you said, it's not going to hurt to call and just get some estimates for what that would look like. Because that's
Right.
one thing that can hold you back from a better life in general, or some of your more like, I guess, targeted career goals in general. That'd be sad to have it held back by something that could potentially be answered pretty quickly and not even be as bad as you're making it out to be.
Yes. And then the other thing too is you can also, and not to get into too much of the financial stuff, but there's also something called like a SEP account, so that you can basically take part of your income if you have your own business, and you can then have some of that put into this account,
Hmm.
and it's not taxed yet. And so that's another way that you can save. So maybe you're joining a group practice and they don't offer a 401k,
Yeah.
but you can ask your accountant about other like investment options, and that's one, but there's also a lot of other ones. And you can get your own 401k and kind of see what else is out there. So those are just things that you can do on your own if someone else is not offering those things.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to the benefits because I think that's what holds people back sometimes from
Mhm.
making a change. So there's a lot of other options, even if it's not the job that can provide you all of those things.
Correct.
It can provide you like the basic things that you need to be in that career path, but some of those other personal things you can handle on your own. There's options.
Yeah. And usually when you're joining a group practice, I know with us, we offer a lot of flexibility with schedule. And so when we have people like join with us, they are looking at that as more valuable, and being able to make their own schedule. And a lot of them will just go and find these other things that they need.
Yeah. I mean, I think for most people, especially because like the flexibility is the biggest win of private practice. That is worth so much more that you can't really put a number on that. So
Right.
I think some people are willing to, I mean, once you set up the insurance, you're good, right? Like once you find it and you pay, you're fine. Like check that box. Like you said, once you have the right
Right.
accountant, you set up your own retirement, you check that box and have it go into that account every month. Like,
Right.
so it's really not that difficult. It's just some extra steps that I think intimidate people because nobody really talks about the money part or some
Right.
benefits when it comes to private.
Right. Mhm. And so
So
it's just a matter of taking baby steps and just kind of breaking things down, and just tackle a few things at a time so you're not overwhelmed. But it's worth it in the long run.
yeah. And I think, for a lot of people, especially depending on where their life goes or their career, they're going to need some more of that flexibility or have more control over the clients they take on um,
Right.
or they have kids now and they need a different schedule or whatever it is. So I think
Mhm.
if flexibility is something that's going to improve their quality of life or help with burnout, not to let these things like retirement or health insurance hold them up from doing
Right.
that. That's great. Were there any other tips that you could think of for new therapists when it comes to like things they should know with private practice, either group or solo?
I just think that it's important when you're interviewing, to ask a couple questions. So one of those would be, what does your work-life balance look like? And you want to find out if they promote work-life
Yeah.
balance because that's important to know. I also recommend that you potentially ask to talk to some of their other therapists
Mm,
that work there. And if they're guarded about that, then that might be a red flag. I know that I offer that all the time, and I actually encourage my potential hires to do that,
wow.
because I feel like they need to know what it's like. And also, you need to find out too, like, are they retaining their therapists for a long time? Like, are they only keeping them for a few months or a year? Like, I know for us, most of ours retain for a very long time. And so that's really important to know too, because if they're not retaining people for a long time, you need to find that out.
Absolutely. Ooh. Okay, I got some juicy questions based off of what you just said. I got to get comfortable. Okay. So I think I saw a meme the other day that said like before you go to a place, they want 3 references from you. You need to be asking for 3. Can I speak to 3 happy employees? Which I thought was funny, but it's also true. And then when you said that, one, I thought of that meme, but also I think that that is amazing that you offer that and not even just offer, but like encourage people
Mhm.
to do that. So are like new therapists or whoever you're hiring, are they shocked when you're like, do you want to talk to some employees, get their feedback? I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, I'm a true believer that if you manage a company and you're not doing it out of fear
Mm,
and you offer transparency in what you're offering them and you are really trying to find a good fit,
yeah.
that you will have the people that you need to and you will have a successful business. And I think that if you're finding that your potential employer or the person who maybe owns a group practice that you're thinking about joining seems closed off,
Hmm.
uh, it doesn't really offer a lot of information, or doesn't seem transparent, then that is probably not a good sign.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I see and hear horror stories all the time of group practices, but there's also a lot of really good ones. And
Mhm.
I love that you're valuing the how do I put it? So you're not just looking for what can they bring to the table for my practice. You're seeing also what can we offer them, which is huge, that you're also putting
Exactly.
the therapist as a priority.
Yes, and I always try to make people understand that it is important for me to
Mhm.
make sure that they're going to be there long term. And so I'm going to do everything on my end to make sure that they're appreciated, they feel happy, that they're recognized, and they're getting their needs met. And that is just not a financial decision for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's such good karma too. I think. And
I
I
hope so. We'll find out.
yeah, I love it though. I love it. And I think that I just can picture different interviews that I've had. And if something like that was offered to me, I can think 2 things. One, there's probably some jobs I would have never taken had I been able to speak to some of the employees, um, or thought more about what to ask at some of these
Right.
interviews. And then I think on the other side, I'm like so happy that there's people like you out there who do that and who really value and take care of your employees. Because I think it's sometimes like, restaurant reviews where you're going to have a lot of the worst food I ever had or the worst service, because people are so much quicker to complain sometimes than to praise.
Mhm.
I am glad that you brought up some of these qualities that therapists should look for in the employer instead of just like, I hope they want me, like you need to make sure you want them. So what are they
Mhm.
offering you? Because I think sometimes group practices get a bad rap because some people have had bad experiences and that may taint other people's views of joining one, but there's so
Right.
many benefits of joining one. So, and it sounds like, for you, well, I guess you can speak on it more than I can. What do you think would be some of the benefits for therapists out there who are like, I'm not really sure about private practice. I don't think I want to go out on my own. Like, I'm thinking of joining a group. What would some of those benefits be for them to join one?
Well, it's less stressful. I know that when I started out doing it all by myself, there's a lot of work that goes into the billing aspect. There's a lot of work that goes into the marketing.
Mm.
One of the things that I did appreciate when I was in a group practice was I basically got to make my schedule. I got to see my clients and I got to go home, and I did
Yeah.
not have to worry about the business component. And at that time in my life, that's what I needed. And that was
Mhm.
really helpful for me and valuable to me. And later, what I needed or wanted kind of shifted, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But at that time, I felt like that was a good fit for me. And that's what I wanted to sort of have at that moment.
Oh, yeah. So to have certain things, like you said, not dealing with some of the admin stuff, not dealing with rent or some of the billing, like you just see your clients, you do your notes, and you go home for them.
Right.
So I think that for somebody who's not totally sure about private practice and like for doing it individually, or if they even want to, I think joining a group, then it sounds like they can still get those benefits of having coworkers.
Mhm.
So especially if they're newer in their career, having those
Right.
people there. Do you guys do consultation groups or anything like that at yours?
So we make sure that we meet at least twice a month
Okay.
where we will sit down and I will basically just kind of keep everyone in the loop of what's going on. I know one of the complaints I hear a lot is that like there's no communication at group practices and
Yeah.
things shift, or we're just like, passing each other and
Right.
never having communication, not getting that connection. And I just don't know what's going on in the organization. And so that's my opportunity to let everyone know kind of what I'm working on. I ask them for feedback. I ask them if there's anything I can do for them that they need from me, if they have any suggestions that they would like me to consider.
Mhm.
And then also too, like if people need to, consult with each other about certain things, they have that opportunity as well.
Oh, that's so nice. It's very collaborative at your practice.
Mhm.
I like that too. And that may be something that people should look for as well. That it's not this owner is like the Wizard of Oz and you like never see them, when you're just like, who are they? Are they real? It sounds like you do a good job of continuously checking in with your employees,
Yes.
deciding or like being open and present for them to talk to, deciding
Right.
and making decisions that impact them with them and not
Right.
just necessarily for them. Um,
Right.
which is amazing. So I think those are all qualities people should look for as well when they're
Mhm.
thinking of going to a group practice. But
The other thing too, before I forget, talking about sort of like what maybe you should ask for
yeah,
when you're interviewing with someone is also like transparency with finances. It's really important that during that pay period when you are getting paid that you see like what is coming in, and like which clients you're getting paid for. I know I've had some clinicians tell me in the past that one of the reasons that I chose you or chose this practice is
mhm,
because you told me that you were going to give me a detailed report, and I'm going to see what y'all have collected on my behalf, what is still outstanding, and that you encourage me to do a checks and balance system so that I can make sure that I'm getting paid correctly.
mhm,
Because what I tell people is, I'm not trying to withhold your money. Like you
yeah,
have worked really hard for it. And I've heard horror stories where group owners are not paying their clinicians correctly.
yes,
And to me, that's just very dishonest. And that is not my goal. I want people to make money. I want them to be successful, because if they're successful and if they're happy, then that helps my practice grow, right? So
yeah,
it's really not in my best interest to not be transparent. And so that's important too, is to make sure that you can do a checks and balance system And I tell them, like, if you have a question, ask our biller, like, reach out to her directly. You
Mhm.
know, she is an agency basically that I contract out to. And so she also wants to make sure that things are right too, because that's how
Yeah.
she gets paid.
Right.
And so she can help you figure out maybe why you're missing a payment. Maybe it's got caught up in processing, which is really common with insurance. Sometimes they take a long time to process payments. But I think it's really good to ask that question too and know what you're getting. Because I think I had one person tell me that basically they were told you just have to trust us. And I don't like that answer. I don't think that that's a good answer.
No, and you don't mess with people's money.
No.
Like, I mean, again, there's student loans, people have bills, they have things that they need to pay and do. And, it's already different in private practice because you're not going to get a consistent paycheck
Right.
every 2 weeks like you would in an agency. So I think that transparency really matters in a place
Hmm.
like that. Yeah, I had a friend that at one place her check was wrong multiple times. One time, like overpaid $1,000, and then they were like, "Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. So we're taking 1,000 out of your next check instead of breaking it up." So then she was like, "Well, wait, now my next check's going to be like nothing." Because I didn't know you overpaid me. So that money's gone. Like it's a whole thing. And then she worked at another group practice and that place wouldn't pay. I think at one point they owed her like $9,000. So yeah.
Wow.
And another person there that I knew that worked at that same one, I think there was a point they owed her like 16 or 17,000 and she was trying to get a house and the bank wouldn't approve her initially because her income didn't look high enough because she wasn't getting paid. So there was no transparency there. There was no discussions. It was just you'll get paid when you get paid. So yeah, and that's what caused really high turnover there. But I think it's
Yeah.
great that you're transparent because I think sometimes in group practices, a lot of people don't know why is 40% or whatever that percent, 30%, whatever
Right.
it is, they don't know where it's going. So if you're able to break it down, here's how many sessions, here's the fees for each, here's
Hmm.
everything, taxes or whatever else is being taken out. I think people feel more secure and they
Right.
trust you more.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree. I just think those are important kind of questions to ask somebody before joining a practice. And if they're not willing to be transparent with finances, then that's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. Oh, we need more group practice owners like you out here. Seriously. But I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today because I think there's a lot of people who are really interested in joining a group practice, but they don't know where to start. Or, like I said, they're kind of intimidated by some of these aspects of
Right.
insurance and benefits, or they might not even know what questions to ask if they're doing an interview for a group practice. And I can pretty much guarantee that the majority of people who watch this will never have thought that they should ask to speak to other employees there or know that that was a possibility. So I think that's
Right.
gonna help. But
Excellent.
yeah. Well, is there anything else that you're working on or anywhere specifically that people can find you or follow you?
Sure. We do have a blog on our website if anyone's interested in checking it out. And also have some other like media content on there. But it's ihealthservices.org.
Okay.
So they can do that and they can also email me if they have questions or need assistance or consulting or anything like that at mnight@ihealthservices.org.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'll link everything below so people can follow and see. And I'm sure there's going to be some other great stuff coming up. I kind of know a little bit, but some big stuff's coming up. So that'll be great for people to follow. But thank you so much for taking the time to do this today. I think you're going to help a lot of people and save them some of the group practice trauma that others have gone through. But
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was great.
yay. Well, thank you again. For you guys out here, if you want to subscribe below, then you can stay on top of future videos. I also started a Facebook group recently for new therapists, so join that. That's below too. And I will see you next episode. Bye.
Oh, and there's a lot of Alabama people in your group.
There is a lot of Alabama people courtesy of Michelle. So if you want to connect with some of them, go for it. I've got a spreadsheet in there so you can see which state everybody's in and find some other new therapist friends to connect with. But
Perfect.
yay. Well, thank you. Bye, guys.